Another thing you'll need to understand about formulas is the concept of absolute references. Now, earlier in this lesson, we talked a little bit about how formulas inherently are designed to have a relative reference. That means when you move the formula down or across, those cell references inside that formula will adjust to match your movements. But sometimes that is a problem. Let's go through a quick example of what I mean by that. In cell M2, I'm going to type in 0.15. And this is going to be my sales tax. And I'll even label this. And what I want to do is I want to apply a 15% tax on all the revenues in the United States. So I'll type a little formula in here, equals revenue times the 15% tax. I'll press enter. So 15% of 519,996 is 77,999. And just for posterity, I'm going to format this particular cell as a currency. So the idea here is that I should be able to copy this formula down and have it be valid just like it was for the grand totals that we did previously. So I'm going to click on this formula, press Ctrl-C to copy it, and then paste it into cells 4 through 8. Now you'll notice that there's no results in these cells. Now why is that? Well, let's analyze cell L4. My formula here says H4 times M3. Well, what's M3? M3 is this cell right here. There's nothing there. Well, my original formula didn't say M3. My original formula had H3 times M2. M2 is the tax rate. So why is the formula in cell L4 referencing M3? Well, this is because formulas are by default designed to adjust any references relatively, meaning as I move my original formula, the references are going to keep up with me. The result is that moving that formula down one row moved the reference, which was M2, down one row to cell M3. Now the problem is, there's no variable in the cell M3. It's in cell M2. So the question is, how do I move or copy my formula down without having the references change on me? The answer is, I need to change or convert the reference to cell M2 to an absolute reference. Now what does that mean? In essence, it means I need to tell Excel not to move the reference for M2 down one row. Now I can do that by simply typing in a $ in front of the number 2. Why the number 2? Because the number 2 represents the row 2. And I need that cell or that reference to be locked at row 2. So instead of typing in H3 times M2, I'll adjust this formula to be an absolute reference. I'm going to go to the formula bar. And in the formula bar, I'm going to place a $ there and press enter. Now, I have an absolute reference, M2, with the row being absolute. Now if I copy this and paste it down, my formula works. Now let's take a second look at that formula in cell L3. You'll notice here that the reference for the revenue, H4, did move down a row. It was H3, now it's H4, but the reference to the second row, row 2, did not change. That's because we locked it down with an absolute reference. And that carried through to all the formulas I pasted. Now keep in mind, you can also have absolute references for columns. So for example, if I put a tax rate in cell A10, and if I reference cell A10 and a formula calculating the tax amount, I'll get the same result if I simply copy and paste across. For example, as you can see, I get 0 here. Again, it's because the references are relative. I'm referencing cell A10 here in this formula. I'm moving over 2 columns, and so does the reference. It moves over to C10. So what I'll need to do is make column A an absolute reference. And I can do that again by typing in the $ in front of it. Now that column A in the reference A10 is an absolute reference, I can copy and paste it, and if I widen the column here, you'll see that the formula worked.